Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining me today. And thanks for everyone who attended today's trainings, all of them from the morning. I know it's been a long day, and hope everything has been quite helpful and useful for everyone. My name is Michael, as you might have noticed me in the intro at the beginning of the day. So I'm part of the Lebanese community at Google who are planning on providing the right tools and access in the education field in Lebanon. So hopefully the day has been quite insightful for all teachers and schools in Lebanon to be able to take online learning to the next steps. So a bit about myself. I am born and raised and I studied in Beirut, and I've been with Google for almost 2 years now. And for the last but not least session of the day, we'll be having a conversation with Dr. Rasha Mashmoushi, who's an educational psychologist, and we'll be discussing a bit about the impact of online learning on a psychological aspect and different aspects, as well as the impact of the Lebanese crisis over the last 1+ year. Let's just stay for the last year, and basically with what kind of impact that has on students from all ages. And also we'll be tapping a bit into the topic of children with special needs and what kind of different psychological impact it has on those children. So joined with us today is Dr. Rasha Mashmoushi. Hi, Doctor. I will leave it to you to introduce yourself now. If you could tell us a bit about yourself, what kind of work you've done and why these topics and today's trainings are relevantly important to you. You can take the floor.
Hi, Michael, and hello, everyone. First of all, I want to thank you and the team in Google for giving me this opportunity today to take part in such an important, event targeting very important subject to obviously the Lebanese students and the Lebanese teachers. I'm Lebanese as well, so again, this is a topic that is a bit emotional to me because it concerns students and teachers and children from my country. As you said, my background is in educational psychology. I've been working in this field for the past over 10 years, and my specialty really is in diagnosing and assessing, as well as intervening with students with neurodevelopmental disorders or special educational needs. And I'm currently now working in Dubai, and I've been in different places in the working in different countries in the MENA region. So I hope today will be a chance where we can discuss a little bit of the difficulties that these students in Lebanon are having, and in specific, but in general as well, students all around the world having to adjust to e-learning, online learning, and how this obviously affects learning and their psychological and emotional well-being.
Yeah, and as you said, this is a topic that doesn't only impact children and students in Lebanon, but this is a global topic, sort of, that where everyone is trying to adapt, everyone's trying to, change that environment. And with the pandemic and everything that's going on, you can see it with your eyes, just sort of all the impact like this whole situation has been on students. And
Yes.
with today's trainings, we notice, and the last, trainings we've not just Google, but a lot of other companies have been doing, is sort of to make sure that teachers and students and companies, they're all equipped with the right tools and the right sort of digitization techniques and resources they need to be able to adopt. So before we dive into all those pros and cons and the psychological aspect of things, I would love to know a bit more about what kind of projects and programs you've been a part of, where you feel this might be a bit similar to what we're trying to talk about today.
Well, obviously, a lot of things have changed when it comes to learning, and as you said, there's a lot of adjustments that had to be done from the students' perspective, as well from the teacher's perspective, to try and see what best teaching style, what best teaching, what platforms are there to be able to help these students. So most of the work that I've been doing recently was trying to help teachers with those students who have special educational needs, on how they can cater for that through online teaching, and what are the accommodations that needs to be put in place to make sure that this is their needs are met. Having said this, as well, parents needed a lot of support as well. It was a difficult phase for parents, having to stay at home and also worry about their work, and at the same time having to accommodate for their kids. So really, teachers and parents needed a lot of support during the past few months, almost 1 year.
Yeah, and you were talking about sort of also a bit about the parents, the teachers, the students. I think all aspects of just any sort of sector is sort of having that psychological, emotional, and mental toll on them. And we know that there's a lot to be said on this sector and this sort of situation that we're on. Today, I think we'll be focusing more on the students aspect of things, and maybe we'll tap into what teachers can be doing to sort of help that emotional well-being, and sort of for us to understand what's going on behind the scenes so that we can help what's going on, at the front ends of things. So thanks for the introduction. It's great to have you here with us, and to sort of kick things off with with sort of the impact of online learning. So based a bit on your research and your experience, how do you think COVID, just the pandemic as a whole, has impacted the students' learning and also the students' mental health?
Okay, so when we talk about the COVID, it's about the lockdown, e-learning, and having obviously to stay at home for an extended period of time. That was sudden, and it was teachers, students, parents did not have any enough time for any transitional period. So I'm going to start off with the learning impact. So when we say when we talk and we learning, what are the important factors, what are the important aspects that affect a child's learning? So the first aspect is obviously the within child factors. So there are the abilities of the child, the skills of the child that impact on how much he or she is able to learn. The other aspect is obviously the teacher. So the teaching style of the teacher, the way she presents the information, the way she's able to cater for the learning style of each student. And the third aspect, obviously, is the physical environment. So when you have a consistent physical environment, you have, an environment that is consistent with specific routines, with specific, tasks to be done. This is an environment that would enhance learning of a child. So now we're going to be kind of talking of each of these aspects and discussing how each really was impacted by online learning and having to stay at home. So if we take, for example, the teacher's aspect, so the teaching style of the teacher, this has changed a lot from one-on-one interaction. So the teacher is behind the screen. That there's no minimal communication with the students. There's no assessment. There's no ongoing assessment that's going on. So the teacher does not know if the children or the students are understanding, what's being taught. The teachers themselves are not confident in using, online platforms, so they needed time themselves to be able to adjust to this and get used to it in order for it to be effective. And it's really just mostly at the beginning, at least in the beginning stages, it was the teacher, explaining, and the students more or less being passive and just taking in information. Obviously, this is not the best best way of teaching. The child needs to interact. There needs to be hands-on activities. There needs to be monitoring for their learning and for their assessment of how much they're learning. So this is one aspect that really was not helping children in the learning, is the teaching style and how much the teacher is really on board and is doing ongoing assessment for the students. The other aspect would be the environment. So each one of these students were sitting at home. We don't really know what was going on at home. Each of the students had their own environment. We don't know how much the routine was put in place, how much the environment around. Was it a quiet environment? Was it were there a lot of distractions around the children? Were they maintaining a proper routine at home? And again, that was a challenge for parents. Parents at the beginning struggled to make sure that student had a specific routine and the learning, the environment where they studied really was an environment that was suitable for learning, as far as the physical setting. And then we go into the child's own cognitive abilities and the child's own learning abilities. So for a child, obviously, let's start with the very basic thing. For a child to be able to learn, obviously they need to be attentive. So that's the first cognitive skill, is the ability to pay attention. With all that's happening, how much did we expect our children or our students to actually sit and pay attention on a screen for, I don't know how many hours per day? A child with language issues, with language difficulties, how were we able to monitor? How is the teaching happening? How is the child with language difficulties able to cope with all the the online teaching, the language demand that learning has on online learning? Another difficulty would be, for example, a child with fine motor skills. So is this child able to type properly and to be able to go with be at the same pace as their peers? Or a child with, for example, processing difficulties, processing speed difficulties. Of course, it's been very difficult for them to be able to stay on track, finish everything that is required of them to finish, to process the information that is given to them. So these difficulties, these abilities of the children within a classroom setting, the teacher is more or less able to support these children, or at least be sensitive to any difficulties that a student have. If not her, then there's a teacher assistant who's usually present in the classroom to be able to support. So really it was different factors with difficulties in different areas that all of them, I think, impacted e-learning. That, having said that, not all children struggled. Some children, the transition was okay. They have very good, they have very good cognitive skills. They were able to transition very quickly. The same applies to teachers. Some teachers were able to, adjust faster than others. So that's sort of the three main areas that we need to think of that impacted the learning of students.
Okay, that sounds very interesting. And one thing I would love to ask you about is, so with COVID, a pandemic that is really promoting social distancing, and it gets confused with actual between social distancing or actual like distancing. So because we removed them from the classroom, we also removed their social interaction because of COVID, and that will definitely have an impact on the students. How can you sort of explain that, removing that social element and moving to virtual?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, we had to sort of do everything virtually, and children, I've heard it a lot from parents seeing their kids become demotivated, not losing, kind of losing interest in going out. I mean, at least later when the lockdown was over and we had obviously the ability to be a bit more mobile, but they could see a difference in their children in the sense when it comes to their motivation level of wanting to going out, socializing with other kids, and being interested in doing physical activities. So they can see them being less active and less wanting to be obviously physically active and interacting. So I mean, that problem, of course, became even worse for children who already have difficulties in their social communication difficulties. So a child who is generally sociable and has good communication skills, they will be able to bounce back eventually and will be able to, kind of get back used to being in a classroom and going to school. But I think those kids who already have predisposition to difficulties, these kids, I think, that need our attention when they need to go back to real life and they want to go back to school, because it's going to be a difficult journey back to socially, physically interacting with others.
Yeah, well said. And I believe, because I think, speaking about myself and a lot of other peers and friends and family members, the pandemic sort of had an emotional toll on mental health for adults and like for everyone, including students. So if as adults we had sort of this mental health issues, as students they definitely, like students that are going through puberty, going through their last few years of university high school, that sort of, they also get impacted a lot with mental health.
No doubt.
So one thing I want to add for the chat here on YouTube, that if you have any questions along the way, please write them down, and at the end of the session we have a Q&A segment, so we will actually go through them via a queue. And just wanted to drop that quite quickly, and that makes sense, Rasha, what we were talking about. So that kind of moving to online learning definitely changed the students' environment, and that could also, do you think that could also not only impact their learning but also impact their growth from the different aspects? So their growth in terms of becoming a more mature person, a more sociable one, and also their growth in terms understanding their career development and how it's gonna proceed.
Yes.
So that's the first part of the question. The second part is, how do you think teachers can actually what can they do to sort of tackle these issues?
Yeah, I would like just to add a little bit about what you said regarding the mental health of the student. Again, as you mentioned, it's not just the students; it's the parents, the students, and the teachers. So all of us, we have to go through a lot to be able to adjust to this new situation. And students, whether adolescents or young children. They do sense it when their parents are stressed, when their parents are anxious, when there's a lot of uncertainties going on, and obviously they have been affected, of that. So I'm sure that the anxiety level went up for a lot of parents and for a lot of students, because number one, regarding health issues, so everybody was worried that they would get sick. There is a lot of uncertainties. When are we going to go back to school? What are we going to do? How is life going to be after COVID? Are we going to go back to living our lives as we used to before? So there's a lot of questions that was happening, and nobody actually has an answer for that. We were all kind of going through these uncertainties that obviously it made people feel more anxious. And as I said before, if you are predisposed to having anxiety, then obviously this was a very a big trigger, to develop anxieties. And again, there is a lot of we went through a lot of it was like a journey of low moods, and then just picking ourselves up, and then trying to kind of do what we have to do. So again, I think a lot of the kids suffered, of times when they were feeling demotivated, disinterested. There's the low mood as well that affected, it's affected everything, their learning, their social interaction, so on, and so forth. And there is, as I mentioned before, having less exercise, it's obviously affects the mood, our sleep patterns, the sleeping patterns of our of children as well was not regular anymore. It was it was not regulated. So again, that affects the mental health of students, of children, of adults. And there's as well the a lot of children as well, they have adjustment difficulties, so they struggle to be able to adjust to new environments and to new settings. So this phase of adjustment from one way of learning, from one way of living to another as well, was not an easy journey for a lot of parents, as well as for students. Sorry, I just wanted to just take mention a little bit about the
Yeah,
psychological aspect.
of course. And I would follow up with just a quick note that it's been a bit of a trend where students, and like not just students and also adults at work, where as soon as they wake up, they stay in bed and they open their
Right,
laptops and they sort of just
right.
check the box that they're there. But that also is just an unhealthy habit
Okay.
that goes in. Anything you'd like to add exact to that?
Yeah, I mean, this is when we talked about the physical environment. I mean, when I said a proper physical environment for learning is that where there's a specific desk that the child is sitting on, there is no distractions, there's a specific schedule, there are breaks are set before time. So all of these, and just making a structure for your day and the physical place where you study or you work, it does make a lot of difference. And I'm not sure about Google, but a lot of companies did actually provide tips for their employees on what are the proper way to work at home. They even provided desks, comfortable desks, comfortable chairs for their employees. And this obviously the same applies for students. You cannot
Mhm.
expect a child to learn while sleeping in bed in their pajamas and barely has just woken up. So
Mhm. Exactly. And to go back to the previous question, which is about a bit long term and growth. So that 1 year of just not being in a bit of a chaotic, maybe not really healthy habit sort of way, what kind of impact does that have on a long term aspect with children who are planning their careers, they're planning their growth and so on?
I mean, obviously, um, over here, yani, I think as far as learning, I personally, as an educational psychologist, I wouldn't be expecting a student to have learned in this year what they should have learned if they have went physically to school. So
Mhm.
that's the first point. I mean, the amount of learning, how much they were able to learn and and acquire new skills, new academic skills. I wouldn't expect a child to have excelled in this. If they have, then that's brilliant. But it's not a surprise that many of them obviously will start to develop this academic gap because they are not up to the at least the grade expectations. As
Mhm.
far as higher grades, so we're talking about high school who are planning they're going into university or vocational studies. Of course, there was a lot of pressure on the students because there are examinations that they need to do. They have to obviously acquire, get high grades to be able to go to university. So definitely there was a lot of pressure on them on to be able to achieve what they need to achieve. So as far as growth in general for all the students, it will really depend a lot on what are we gonna do to help students when they go back, when we go back to our normal lives. So they write support at all levels, whether learning, whether emotional, psychological, social support. The same difficulties that children had to move into online learning, I think we need to support them as well to go back when they go back to actually physically
Mhm.
going back to school, because with all the difficulties that they had to go through.
Yes, exactly. And what do you recommend sort of teachers to take action plan into sort of helping the students in that regard?
The most important thing is just to have clear expectations that are set. When they go back to school, the transitional phase, first of all, it needs to be gradual, in the sense that we are not going to expect children to go back full time to school, just the next day. So at least we can have like a half day where they can go and just try to get back to the system and try to get used to going back to school, explain everything for the students. How is the school year going to be? What is the school day going to look like inside the classroom? What are the expectations of what we are going to be doing? What is expected of
Mhm.
them to do when it comes to are they going to be having to do social distancing? Will they? So all of these new rules, if you want, that
Mhm.
are going to be applied, needs to be very clearly explained to students, communicated with them before they actually start going full time to school. um, any difficulties that they encounter, they need to be also informed about. So children might be told that the first phase is going to be difficult. You're going to feel you don't you are out of place. Maybe sometimes your friend are, for example, going to be uh, need support when it comes to following the rules. So all the difficulties that might come or might arise as well, students need to be informed about them and have a chance to talk about it and discuss it.
Exactly, and I agree with that. And if we take it, so let's just take it a bit broader. And since we were talking about what kind of COVID had an impact, and if we look a bit more specific, yet broad, with the Lebanese situation that's been going on for the last 1+ year, to be just restrained to that 1 year, with everything that's been going on, event after event, and after sort of last year's economic crisis, and then this year's blast in August, and then everything that's going on, sort of, I'm sure that the impact sort of really doubles and triples when it comes to the students' mental health. And that could, so my question is that, how does that affect personal and social development for students that have to go through something like that in the last year or two?
Yeah, unfortunately, we've been through a lot in Lebanon, and I was there. I was in Lebanon, and I just moved a month ago, so I had to live all of these unfortunate events in Lebanon, and had to. And I saw, I saw how parents were struggling, teachers, students. So in Lebanon, we kind of went through the revolution, where roads, where there were a lot of roads blockage. Students woke up in the morning, didn't know if they are able to go to school or not. There was a lot of closing of schools during that period, and they just sat at home for days, not knowing when will they be able to go back to school. So again, talking about anxieties, talking about low motivation, low interest. Obviously, this is all of these events were negatively impacting the psychological well-being of children. And then we came into the economical crisis and all the stress and that came with that. Economically, parents were facing a lot of difficulties. A lot of students had to leave school because their parents were not able to afford the tuition fees of the school. They were not able to provide, school supplies for their students. Again, just mentioning again that children, they take in the stress of their parents, and
Mhm.
it was a stressful situation for everyone, in Lebanon, and at obviously for parents. Then we had the COVID, so that was another additional crisis that we went through. There were a lot, again, health issues. So on top of the economical crisis and the standard of living, there were health issues that adults as well as parents were worried about. Especially that we were at a time in Lebanon where the government were not able to provide, uh, uh, healthcare for people. So that was another worry for everyone. I mean, if they got sick, will they be able in hospitals to provide proper healthcare? And then all of that, and then we had the last and the most unfortunate event, which was the explosion. That did not only bring a lot of depression and anxiety to people. There was a lot of traumatic. It was really a traumatic event. Uh, People really struggled to afterwards. Um, uh, yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
kids were traumatized of the experience. Add on that the grief for a lot of people who lost loved ones, so they had to go through grief, through loss at all levels. It could have been the
Mhm.
loss of their house, but it doesn't have to be the death of somebody close. The loss of the loss of their home and their lives, so on and so forth. So really you can just imagine the emotional journey, the emotional
Yeah.
stress here and the psychological uh, difficulties that every single human living in Lebanon had to go through, and especially to children who probably needed somebody to explain to them everything that was happening.
Mhm.
As adults, we can try to explain things to ourselves, but as children, they needed this, somebody just explaining things to them, not
Mhm.
necessarily having to tell them what's going to happen because nobody knew what's going to happen. But it's just, you can imagine the effect of this on the learning, on the social interaction with others, on their motivation. And unfortunately, we're still there. People,
Yeah.
there are a lot of people who left Lebanon, but there are a lot of people who are still there and having to deal with these stressors every single day of their lives. And the unfortunate thing, sorry, is that we are still expecting children to learn. And there's a curriculum that we need to finish by the end of the year, and there are assessment and tests that we need to do. I mean, that's not realistic. That's to put it this way.
Exactly. And we're looking at students sort of losing motivation and losing more reasons to lose motivation every month, sort of one thing happening, and then kept on getting harder and harder to a point where now motivation, I think, is something really hard for the students to just,
You
have.
can also imagine, Michael, the amount of parents who came to me, not complaining, but just sharing their concerns of how demotivated their kids are at all levels, not just learning. They just feel that their kids are not living their lives. They should, they're just, and you can imagine why. I mean, it's not a surprise. It's just a matter of what can we do to help them, having a proper expectations as well. We will not expect them. We will not expect change to happen suddenly, or a change that can, a tremendous change. Just small changes I think that's what we
Mhm.
need to look into at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. And but also for students to sometimes to get their own motivation, I think they start, as you said, some people have the opportunity to leave and to look abroad, some do not. But let's say for the one that, so after the last year of events, I believe that really has pushed students to look abroad for more and more opportunities. So how do you think that really impacts the students' focus and motivation at school, knowing that they need to work 2 times, 3 times harder than their peers just so that they can have an opportunity outside of
Yeah,
Lebanon, and
yeah,
taking into consideration everything else that they're going through?
yeah. Um, Definitely. I mean, obviously, with all that's happening, you can imagine any person to maybe lose focus a bit and not be focused, and just because they're overwhelmed. Uh, so I'm for sure 100%. A lot of students are thinking of leaving Lebanon and continuing their education abroad. That's one, uh, or finding jobs. If they are still at
Mhm.
the beginning of their careers, they're looking to for opportunities outside of Lebanon. Um, I mean, there are two aspects. Let's focus on students who wants to continue their studies abroad.
Mhm.
First of all, as you said, there's the motivation aspect. So, how difficult is it going to be for somebody living through this every single day to still be focused, still study hard, and still, putting a lot of effort to be able to, to achieve well in school, to be able to secure a place at the university abroad.
Mhm.
So alone, you can imagine how heavy this is. Just to be focusing, to be having to study with all the stressors that there is. Um, uh, but again, some students might be motivated. So it really depends on how the student is responding to that. So some student will not be able to cope with this because for them it's too overwhelming. But
Mhm.
other students will be luckily more goal oriented, and they just they have a goal that's there. They want to be out of Lebanon, so they're going to do everything they can to be able to secure, a place outside. But
Yes.
again, there are financial aspects. So even if students do have the intention and they want to leave, their parents and the financial situation in Lebanon is really not helping, in the sense that the parents are not able to afford sending their children abroad,
Mhm.
so they have to depend on scholarships. So the lucky ones will be able to go, but even if the intention is there and the student, the person wants to leave, again it's not completely in their hands, which is again very unfortunate, because there's a lot of potential uh, there's a lot of potential for these students that they can achieve abroad, but the situation in Lebanon is preventing them from that.
Exactly. Exactly. And we talk about resilience and how this sort of going through life events like that builds resilience. But also, we talk about sometimes breaking points that some students won't be able to sort of keep on running that same pace. And I want to focus a bit more on the students that already have challenges and learning difficulties.
Yeah,
And how is that impact a bit different, and what kind of additional impact do children with their learning difficulties sort of go through?
yeah. Yeah, just one other point about resiliency. I mean, I do believe that Lebanese people are very resilient. We've been through a lot, and we faced a lot of problems, a lot of difficulties, but what we've witnessed in the past year was beyond, I think, beyond really anyone can endure, and anyone can
Mm,
handle. So So yes, resiliency is important, and this is what we want to do right now. We want to sort of, build resiliency in students, build resiliency in children, to be able to try and overcome these difficulties. And really, the only, and because we have so many problems in Lebanon, we really need to prioritize what is today a priority to help build resiliency in students. So it's not going to be, a one solution, a one solution for everything. It has
Mhm.
to be, prioritizing what do we need today, what is the priority of helping, of helping. Maybe we will
Yeah.
be talking about this later on. But as far as children with special education, I've talked a little bit about earlier at the beginning about the cognitive abilities of the students. So within student factors that impact learning. And when we talk about learning difficulties, it's obviously children who face cognitive difficulties in one way or another. So for example, a child with dyslexia is a child who struggles with reading, writing, and spelling, so literacy. You can imagine when a child is at home and there's this presentation that's being shared by the teacher, and they need to cope, and they have to be, they have to read what's on the slide. They have to comprehend what's on the slide. So you can imagine how difficult that is for them, having to do this by themselves, and the teacher not being there to be able to make sure that they are able, to follow the pace of the teaching. That apply. Let's take the ADHD child, for example. An ADHD child is a child who has ADHD, is someone who struggles in attention. I mean, then within a classroom setting where the teacher is physically there, and the teacher is physically able to guide and prompt the child, they still suffer. So imagine that they are behind the screen, and
Mhm.
they're lost. They can't focus. There's so many things going on around them in the house, and that's it. You lose them. And organizational skills as well, time management, all of these, there are difficulties that a child with ADHD faces. So again, online learning, it really, the child needs to be an independent learner to be able to cope with all
Mhm.
the details. If the child is not independent in the learning and getting their stuff ready, organizing how they're gonna tackle a task, how they're gonna tackle a test, whatever task that they need to do, they can just be all over the place. There's no guidance. There's no one there to make sure that they are on track, and so on and so forth. With a child with as I said, developmental coordination disorder, fine motor skills type. Are they able to type? Are they able to write on time? Are they able to spell? So it's just I'm sure it's been very, very difficult for these children.
Yeah, and I can see the situation kind of in my head, just with if a student who's 15, 16 with ADHD, for example, and he's learning online virtually. I can just imagine the 10 other tabs that are open and sort of losing that focus, and that also, yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead.
they cannot stay on track. It's impossible actually for them to stay on track and to be organized in the way that they're handling, and all of these tasks that is
Mm.
required of them.
Exactly. And doctor, I have one last sort of question from my end before we open it up to the public, and it's sort of the money shot question, which is what can teachers do to help those students on a sort of psychological aspect?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that can be done. I'm just gonna just speak maybe of just few general tips that obviously needs to be adjusted for every student separately, depending on the case. But the first and the most important thing, I think, is just to have the reasonable and realistic expectations. So when we talk about expectations, is that number one, how much do I expect the child to learn from the way I'm teaching, from today's environment. If 100%, that's not a realistic expectation. If 60, 50, 40, 70, whatever is realistic, then that's fine. We need to sort of as well be mindful for all the emotional stressors that these students are going through. Again, what do we expect? What are we expecting from students today, as far as their commitment to studies, as far as their focus, as far as their effort in studying, and just communicate with them. It's always helpful to just communicate with them, express your own, the teacher's own anxieties, uncertainties, express it to them, make them feel that you understand what they are going through, and that they are part in trying to, to 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 get over all of this. Yeah, and this is really the start point, to be honest. And then afterwards, the teaching and the learning, obviously they require specific accommodations, specific um, recommendations based on the need of each child.
Yeah, very well said. I think everyone who's listening will actually be taking notes. I think it's such a hefty topic to look into. And today, basically, our trainings were mostly to look into what are some ways that we can improve our hybrid and online learning and teaching, but at the same time, how can we also put ourselves in our students' shoes, which is what we wanted to tackle today. So thank you for that for the last 40 minutes. I would love to open it up a bit for any questions from the chat here. I think we have a couple so far. So first one from Jessica: how can we involve community in supporting the learners?
Yeah. I mean, it's really an interesting interesting topic, and I mean the support in the sense, the school really, I feel that they need to play a role in this. So making parents involved, in putting support groups for students. Um, um, and I think parents, in the sense they need, I mean, they are the community around the students. So getting parents involved in their and teaching, making sure that they have the right tips as well to apply at home. Making sure that as I said, the needs of the learners are understood and met.
Okay, so well said. For everyone, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat, and we're gonna go through them for the next 5 to 7, 10 minutes. And I would like to look into the second question by Jess here. Really like this one. So basically, as we're talking about a bit of action plans, Jess is asking what are easy daily practices and strategies that we can all use to center/balance ourselves. So what are some day-to-day things that we can start with?
Yeah, I mean, is it regarding students and children, or is it regarding us adults?
Is there a midpoint, where we can be a common ground, maybe?
Right. Right. So again, when we talk about one of the big problems that we had to face with the pandemic and the lockdown is the fact that our routine and our daily practices were suddenly changed. And when there's a lot of sudden changes, as humans, we like our routines, and we like everything to be set and expected, and we don't adjust very well to changes. So, and this is why there was a lot of emotionally, there was a lot of stressors that came along with the pandemic and the lockdown. So one of the most important thing when sudden change happens is try to develop a routine. So whatever routine works in that particular situation. So whatever the routine is, kind of working from having breakfast at 8, working out even at home, at 10, then setting this as working from 11 to I don't know what, 2, whatever it is, whatever routine works for you. I think that's the most important part. And this applies definitely for for kids. So
Mhm.
so try to, as much as possible, have a specific a structured, a structured
Exactly.
a schedule of how the day looks like, even if it means staying at home all day, but just have a specific schedule, including, of course, physical activities, even if just means, just putting an exercise YouTube session, just with the kids. It's important to physically be active during the day.
Mm. Yes, and I would love to add that sort of dividing your workspace with your sort of personal space is really important with that routine. So not to combine, like not try not to work from your bed, sort of be able to separate those sort of two things in your routine.
Yeah.
And yeah,
One,
anything to add?
yeah, just I just remembered one mother who did stations at home. So there was this reading station. I mean, during the
Mm,
lockdown, uh, and it doesn't have to be something that is sophisticated or anything. Just a reading station where the kids could go and read. A drawing station, playstations. So just to, as you said, just to, just make differentiate, the space, and divide the space into where we're going to be working, where we're going to be drawing, where we're going to be learning, and not just having
mhm,
everything mixed up in one place. And this is, as I said, one of the important aspects of the physical environment.
mhm.
So when everything is set and divided and it's organized, it does make it much easier than when everything is mixed up, and all, everything is everything is all over the place.
Exactly. Exactly. All right. Thank you. Our next question is from Dima Bizri saying, how can we support students with learning difficulties?
Thank you, Dima. Again, that's obviously it's a general question, in the sense that learning difficulties are general in their nature. So it really depends on case by case, and this is the way it is, obviously, even in school. When a child with special educational needs is in school, we put an educational plan that's individualized for that particular student. But generally
Mhm,
speaking, when if a child is still at home, they're still studying online, they're not in school yet. Uh, to start with, there needs to be a clear communication with parents, because now parents are at home. They're the ones who are, responsible, and they're following up on the students. So a plan of support needs to be put in place with the parents, as much
mhm,
as they are able to, because again, some parents are working from home. They cannot afford to be spending all day with the students. So this is the first step. How much are parents able to sit with their kids, and they're able to support them when they are at home? That's the first step. The second step would be to try and organize their schedule in a way that they can be attentive. So let's say they have an attention problem. So we're not going to be expecting them to be sitting 6-7 hours a day on behind the screen and to be focused. We need to be very mindful on how much they are able to actually sit, and the breaks that needs to be given to them. If a child has, they have reading problems, writing
mhm,
problems, again, uh, do we need to provide for them at least somebody who can read the slides for them, read the material for them. The mother can do that, the father can do that, or whoever is at home. Again, the assessment. So a child with learning difficulties, how are we going to assess them? Of course,
Mhm.
we're not going to expect them again to take an exam online, with like the time given to them is the same as the other children. So again, this is one discussion that needs to be done with parents. So the assessment, how are we going to do it? Are parents going to help out? Is the child going to do it verbally? Is the child going to do it individually or with the rest of the group? What are the type of questions that needs to be put in place? So there's the support that needs to be addressed, the type of support, the and obviously the assessment, that how are we going to be assessing these students.
Exactly. So basically, seeing depending on the learning difficulty, what the student needs, and sort of taking that into consideration. I think we have time for one more question. We'll wait a bit to see if anyone else has any questions for you. But in the meantime, you were talking a bit about sort of nurturing that dependence or independence from their parents or with their parents. I think it's really important to have sort of a clear communication with parents. How much you sort of recommend that teachers and parents would be sort of involved together, even if the student has or does not have any learning difficulties?
I mean, this is having said everything today with regarding at least the learning, not the psychological part, some
Mhm,
students have been coping well. And in these situations, obviously, it's just a matter of just making sure that everything is on track and not having
mhm,
to support, give a lot of support for the students. But when if a child is struggling, if a student is having difficulties, whether the parents feel it or the teachers have noticed it, this is where the first and the most important starting point is to have this communication. And as I said, because parents obviously should be involved in all at all times, but today parents are there with their kids all the time, and they are the ones more or less making it, doing the teaching, and they are directly involved in the schoolwork of their kids. So the
mhm,
first step is to try and see what's going on, and why is this child facing difficulties, and accordingly put a plan to support. And again, one very important point is there might be a million problem, there might be an I don't know how many difficulty. It's all about prioritizing. So we won't be able to address all the difficulties at the same time. It needs to be addressed one step at a time, one target at a time, because for the parents not to feel overwhelmed, for the teachers not to feel overwhelmed, and for the students
mhm.
not to feel overwhelmed.
Yeah, and you tapped into sort of the parents not being overwhelmed, and I can imagine parents struggling with sort of working from home and helping their children. If we just can tap a tiny bit into that segment, which is what is your best advice for parents who are struggling to sort of multitask, helping their kids and working from home?
Again, yani, we are not super parents are not superhumans. Yani, they're not going to be they're not going to be able to address everything, and this is very normal. Yani, I think the first step is just to acknowledge that
Mhm,
we cannot do everything, and they are not expected to do everything. Again, prioritizing. So okay, so what do I need to do? Organizing my day accordingly. So from this time until this time, I'm going to be doing the work, and then in the afternoon I'm going to help out the kids. and
mhm,
and and really trust me, and I know it's difficult in the sense that mothers always tell me, or parents always tell me, that it's not doable, it's very difficult to put a structure. But with consistency and just being consistent with it, it does get better with time. It's not gonna, again, it's not gonna happen all of a sudden. It just needs time,
mhm,
and And kids do respond very well to consistency. So as long as you are consistent in this and being very, firm and having and sticking to this routine and this sticking to this schedule, then children do respond, later.
Exactly. We just had two, three questions in a row. I think we have time for maybe one or two. I wanna tackle Jihan Nakhli's question. I think it's quite an important one. Jihan says the problem is with the administrations who still follow the outdated means of assessing students, worrying about cheating instead of acquisitions. So
Yeah.
though they are the ones who make them attend webinars, so what are teachers supposed to do to change the mentality so that they can apply all of this? So what
Yeah.
would be sort of your reasoning towards the administrations?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I hear you. I hear you, Jihan. And as I said, even with regarding to decisions that were made regarding online teaching, and I know online learning, a lot of the decisions had to be made by the administrations of the schools, and obviously not all the teachers were happy with certain situations. I mean, really, it's a difficult one in the sense that what is the reasoning? I mean, the reason is it's obvious when you change the teaching style, you have to change the assessing, the way you are assessing. So you cannot expect a child teaching them physically to assess them in the same way as if they are in the classroom. So everything has changed. So automatically and logically, the way we are assessing our children, our students has to change, or else really it doesn't fit. The assessment and the teaching does not fit. Obviously, in online learning, it's really very difficult to do exams. I know some people are doing exams, they're just doing tests, and the cheating, yeah, of course students might be cheating. There's a million way that they can cheat when they're doing online testing, and we need to accept it, and that's it. So you either change this, because there's no way that you can monitor it, and there's no way that you can make sure it's not happening, because it's not possible. So you either just accept it and accept the fact that students are going to cheat in exams, or you just need to change the whole way you are assessing the students, in which it requires more project based assessment, essay based assessment, just open book type of
Mhm.
testing. So we have to be flexible, and just because this is the way that's the way it is right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and I completely agree with that, having more open-ended questions, sort of understanding like how the students would react to that. And I think, as you said, regardless if it was online or offline, if students will always find a way sort of to attempt
Yeah.
the cheating.
Yeah.
And I think we have time for our last question quickly from Maria. Given the very difficult situation in Lebanon this year, would you recommend a psychological support group for parents as well as for children?
Yeah, for teachers as well. So for everyone, I think.
Yes.
And we've all been through a lot, and we don't want to sort of maybe we did not speak a lot about the emotional stressors that is on teachers as well. So they
Mhm.
have to, as I think it was Maria, was it? No, the pressure from the administration and the pressure
Jihan.
from getting
Mhm.
everything done. So again, and having to transition into online learning, it required a lot of flexibility from teachers as well. So
Mhm.
and then again, there's a lot of pressure that goes with this. Having said this, there hasn't been any changes in Lebanon as far as the curriculum is concerned. So teachers are still expected to teach the full curriculum of each grade, and there's no flexibility in that. So again, there wasn't any support when it comes to this, really, from whether from
Mhm.
the ministry itself, any decisions made about the for the whole country or from schools. So definitely, what we are going through, we are going through a lot of psychological difficulties. Every single person, I think, in Lebanon is, and a support group obviously is helpful for parents, for teachers, for students, and as I said, it's all about communication and just hearing the concerns of teachers and students, and trying to find a way to support them.
Mhm. Fantastic. Completely agree with that. Thank you, Dr. Mashmoushi, for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure to having you with us.
Thank you so much.
And
Thank you for this opportunity, and everybody in the Google, with the Google team. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And one last thing to mention. So thanks for everyone who joined the trainings today. Everything will be put on the website, all the recordings, so you can revisit them. You can revisit the previous sessions or the other breakout sessions that you weren't able to attend, so that you can revisit them and make sure to share them with your peers, with your friends, with the administrations if you'd like, so that we can all take the right steps moving forward. And other than that, I would like to say that we are going to add some feedback sessions next week. We'll be sending you, for everyone who registered, sort of forms, so that we know a bit more about what are things that you liked, that you want us maybe to tap into more, so that we understand your comments about the trainings, about those sessions. And let us know if you have any questions at all. And hopefully you'll be hearing from us very soon. That being said, enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.